Good morning. I'm Phil Fisher, the mayor of the city of Clinton. I'm coming to you today as part of our series of quarterly discussions that we have about things going on in the city of Clinton. But before I get started, I want to remind everybody that the Junior College Girls Softball National Championship is being played this week at Traceway Park. It's the only national championship played in the state of Mississippi. We have that honor, and already we're ahead of the numbers that we were running from last year. So if you have some time this weekend and want to see some high quality softball being played, Traceway Park is the place to go. And I'd ask you to go out there and support those teams from all the various states that we have representing their various conferences and their efforts to be a national champion. Today's topic is a little bit different. In the past, we've always had a discussion. I've had someone up here with me. They talk about a specific topic of interest. Today, I'm going to ask you to listen to this and then comment using the chat ability at the bottom of Facebook. What I'm going to talk to you about today is something that I've named Clinton Next. So what that is, this is a discussion about Clinton in the next 30 years. Where do we want to be in 2050? I feel like we need to spend some time focusing on this and getting your input back. Now, I've been speaking to groups from 5 to 40 people, but I wanted to have an opportunity to go throughout town and give everybody a chance to comment. So what I'm asking you to do is to listen to what we have to say today. We're going to record this and post it on our webpage so that you can refer back to it or have other people refer to it and make their comments. We'll go over the rules for the comments as we go to the chat feature later. But at the end of this, what we hope to do is to start getting the ideas of the things that we need to do to make our city better in the future. Now, what is Clinton Next? Clinton Next is a community-based effort to position our city for economic development and community growth over the next 30 years. It answers the questions, where should we be and how do we get there? What jobs and education are required to compete? And how do we get the community to buy in? One of the ways I'm trying to get the community to buy in, of course, is by this transparency, to come to you today and then to come to you in smaller groups and speak about this. But it's important that if we're going to be successful, we need to get community buy-in. Clinton Next is not a charrette. We're not talking about redesigning streets and buildings and locating things. It's not a discussion of today's picture. I know there's a pothole here, a pothole there. We need to get a sign up. I understand all that, but it's not. This discussion today is not for this purpose. While I'm leading it right now, it's my hope that very soon it will no longer be government run or mayor led. It will be individually led. This is an effort for the next 30 years. If the next election y'all choose to run me out of office, the next mayor may not exactly take this up. So we have to have this separate from government, separate from influences that can change the direction of where this city now states it wants to go as we go through this process. This is not a short series of endless meetings and open-ended programs. And this is not agenda driven. Today I want you to think big, think future, think in terms of your great-grandchildren. But to emphasize again, I do not have a plan. I'm not trying to herd you anywhere. I'm not trying to lead you anywhere. I'm not trying to corral you anywhere. All I'm trying to do is gain information from you. And this is going to be big picture information, sweeping arrows, okay? We don't have to go down into the weeds at this point. We're just trying to get a list of all of the ideas that we need so that we can start looking at those ideas, seeing how they connect with each other, and trying to understand how we can use these combination of ideas and various thoughts in order to come about with the plans that we need to have for the future. So let's now move to a rising tide that lifts all boats. A rising tide that lifts all boats is associated with the idea that improvements in the general economy will benefit all participants in that economy, and that economic policy, particularly government economic policy, should therefore focus on the general macroeconomic development or environment first and foremost. This is just saying big picture, macroeconomics versus microeconomics. The big picture. This is what we have to focus on. Now, let me give you an example of a rising tide lifting all boats. In 1960, John Kennedy was running for president, and this was part of a speech that he gave. So you can see it's more directed, parts of it, to a particular person, but we're going to skip over that part. But here's what he said. You cannot bring industry into Ohio unless you have clean rivers. I think the greatest asset that has happened to Ohio during the last few years was the building of the St. Lawrence Seaway. And I was proud, though I came from Massachusetts, to vote for it because it's a national asset and a rising tide lifts all boats. If Ohio moves ahead, so will Massachusetts. Good water, power, transportation, those are necessary to develop the economy of the United States in the 1960s. Cooperation between different cities and counties are going to be necessary for us to rise. We cannot live in a vacuum. Now, we need to do the best we can within our own city, but we also need to recognize that if a business comes in, a large business comes in, and it goes to Byram, that Clinton will benefit. Byram, Rankin County, Madison, Yazoo County, they all will benefit from Continental Tire. Maybe not to the degree Clinton will or Hinds County will, but they will get some sort of benefit from this. So when opportunities arise that we can work together with other municipalities and counties, we need to take advantage of that because their success will come to us also. And that's an important thing that we need to think about here. So, because I believe if we don't, then in 30 years, this is what we're going to look like. We can't trust and hope for the best. We have to plan for the future. And if we fail to plan for the future, then we're going to have to accept whatever shows up. And so by planning for the future, this is what I hope we move to. And as you can see there, all the ships are sailing and the water's high and it's a bright, clear, sunshiny day. So our mission during this time is to develop a plan leading Clinton, Mississippi, to economic success and statewide leadership over the next 30 years. It's just that simple. That's what we're trying to do. Develop a plan that will lead Clinton to economic success and statewide leadership. Now, to do this, I'm not just pulling stuff out of the air. What I've come to is I'm using the example of Tupelo, Mississippi. Now, I know that we have our rivalries. Tupelo was one of them. But we need to keep in mind that even today as we speak in professional football, a lot of people hate Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, but they're studying everything they're doing to steal their plays and plans so that they can use them and be successful. And that's what we should be doing. Taking good ideas and trying to incorporate them in Clinton as they fit. And so I have read a book called Hand in Hand, Community and Economic Development in Tupelo. You can Google Hand in Hand and read the PDF version for yourself as it talks about how in 1948, where Tupelo started from, and it takes it through the publishing of this book. But when you go from 1948, when they have their whole idea and their hope is to try to grow a dairy herd, all the way up to 1990, when they listed one of their goals is to grow 1 million square feet of industrial business that year, you can see that the principles that they incorporated and the ideas that they had worked well. So our goal then is to concentrate on projects that create jobs or raise incomes, which in turn boost spending on goods and services, resulting in the increase of the local tax base, with a portion of those new earnings reinvested in community development projects. Tupelo is going so strong with this now, it states in their book that if you don't participate, they will ask you to leave town. Everybody is involved with this. The community buy-in has been absolute. And it's really helping them grow into a real factor. You know, we in Clinton look at our competitor cities as a Madison or a Pearl or a Brandon. They look at their competitive cities as Huntsville, Alabama. We see Brandon do something and immediately I get phone calls saying, we need to do that. Or we see Vicksburg do something. Oh, we need to do that. No, we don't. We need to do what fits in the mold of what Clinton is. And we need to start learning and valuing from what other people are doing, in that they will help raise our vote. But at the same time, we need to come up with our own ideas and plans that will bring us into the future. Under the leadership of this, one clear strength that Tupelo has had in pursuing this route is the wealth of what community development specialists call generalist leaders, those whose concern is the community as a whole, not just their piece of it. As we continue this discussion, don't say, well, I'm just for Traceway Park, and all I want to see is Traceway Park, or I'm just for Attachie, and that's all I want to see is Attachie. It's fine to incorporate that into this thought process, but also think bigger picture. Because everything we do will have a second and third level effect, good or bad, and we need to be prepared for it. Let me give you an example. We have numbers anticipating population growth through 2040. What that tells the city is, or challenges the city is, do we have enough housing or lots available? And do we have water and sewer lines running? And do we have the infrastructure that we're going to need to do that? And if we do not, then we go to the next level, which is how do we get there? So keep in mind that any idea that you come up with isn't just something that appears one day. This is a long process, and it's going to take us time to do some things. There are a few things we can do immediately, but in the long term, some of these projects are going to be 10, 15, maybe 20 years before we can get there. The keys to success to this are going to be shared trust, vision, communication, mobilizing resources, and persistence. Shared trust. We have to know that you can throw out something and people aren't going to just criticize you for it. That you have a vision. That's what we're trying to develop in this city. At the end of this process, and it's going to be a lengthy process, at the end of this process, we want to have a vision that states emphatically where we want to go. Communications. We have to get the word out. We have to tell people, this is where we're going. This is the direction we'd like to be in. We want to mobilize resources. That's not just money. That's volunteers. That's connections, grants, anything that will help us get to our goals that we need. And we need to be persistent. Now, I put persistent up there. We need to be persistent because this is a long process. But we also need to be persistent because many mayors will come into office during the next 30 years. And in order to have this going on, we need to have people who are doggedly persistent to keep the goals and the aspirations of this city alive so that it doesn't just die out somewhere in the end. This is not something we're doing to put on a shelf somewhere. This is something we're doing to actually enact and make our city a dynamic place in the culture of the state and of the world in the next 30 years. Now I want to show you some population and median household income. Many times people will ask me, why does everybody go to Madison? What's the draw to Madison? Why do they go there? Well, look under median income for 1917. $57,000 median income in Clinton, $103,000 in Madison. The median income, for those of you who may not know, is if you listed all of the income in the city from the first person to the very lowest number and took that 24,000 or 25,450 number of those people, and you went down to the person in the direct middle, that number is going to be $57,073. So half the people are above that, and half the people are going to be below that. So you can look at this. You can also look at the anticipated increase in 2022, understanding that any kind of projection is just that. It's an educated guess based on given parameters. Any change in those parameters will change this. And this is what we need to do. We need to change some of the parameters so that we have a higher base income. It doesn't matter though, in any of these income levels that we looked at, the city of Clinton in these 5 cities is always 3rd or 4th. Let me give you an example. On our next slide, we have the median, the average, and the per capita household income. So you can see 2017 and 18 median income, which came from the other slide. You can look at the average income, and that's where you just add everybody's income up and divide it by 24,500 people, and that's the number that it comes out to be. And then the per capita income is a little bit more complicated, but depending on whatever number you want to use, the city of Clinton is in third or fourth place. One of the principles that Tupelo came up with was this: you have to raise the income of those at the lowest levels of income in order for everybody to benefit. How do we do that? And I'll tell you a little bit, maybe to help you get some ideas as you start to think about the bigger picture. During our discussion, we found out there are people in the city, churches and other groups, who were talking to the youth today about not just growing up and wanting a job, but growing up and getting a skill. Well, we need to get those people together with, for example, Hines Community College, and talk to them about the industrial management program, a 2-year associate degree, where then you can come out naming your price. I've heard starting figures in the $70,000 range. And that's working in robotics. So you need to get a skill. The young person understands that, but then they don't really know what to do next. By combining these two groups together, we're able to direct them to a skill. Drones are another huge thing that Hines Community College is doing right now. So we need to make sure that we're getting these groups together so that they can find out what is out there and they can be helped along their way. Let's now move to the three-legged stool. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this three-legged stool and what it means. Here's this three-legged stool, okay? As you know, any stool has to have 3 legs to stand. Well, here's Clinton. You belong here. This is us, all right? But if you go anywhere in the state and you say to them, what do you think of when you think of Clinton? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? They're going to tell you education. And that's it. We have opportunity from kindergarten to PhD. We have #1 rated public schools. We have private schools. We have homeschooling opportunities. We're a very well-educated city. But that's what we have. So what happens if something goes wrong in the education leg? We have nothing else to fall back on. We're putting all of our eggs in the education basket. And so an education with 1 leg, the stool will not stand. We need to come up with at least 2 more, and maybe 3 more, or 4 more, or 8 more legs for this city to stand on, so that when one falters, the others will pick it up. Tupelo, and originally, they started in the dairy business, then they went into the furniture. And that was a big pull for them for a long time. But then that furniture industry went out. But by then, they had established other industries, tire, car manufacturers, and in the area of Northeast Mississippi. Caterpillar has a plant there. Toyota has a plant there. There's a number of things that keep picking that area up. Once again, rising waters lift all boats. So that's what we need to direct our efforts on and our thoughts on. So what I'm asking you to do now is to take a few minutes to go to the chat feature and start giving us your ideas. Now, here are the rules. There have to be rules. No, all ideas are important. They all have value. You don't have to get into detail. Just speak in generalities. For example, one person's idea was we need to build an indoor track facility. Okay, don't know if we'll ever do that. May not be something that we do. It may be just an indoor track facility. Another person put out the idea of we need to have more related to adult sports and become a tourism spot for adult sports. That's enough to write down for right now. Because what we'll do is we're going to take all these ideas and then break them down into people who are experts in this field to know what the trends are and what people are looking for. And then we're going to decide if this is possible or not within the guidelines of what we want our city to be. The other rule is no criticism or arguing. This is an opportunity to give out ideas for consideration. Frankly, critical comments are going to just be deleted. We're not interested in somebody blasting into somebody else for their idea. That's not the format here. This isn't, let's talk Clinton. This is a serious effort to get information out so that the leadership in the city can gather it together in one format and then present it back to the city for consideration. So don't criticize somebody's idea, come up with your own. If you choose not to use the chat feature with Facebook, you can always go to Ask the Mayor on our webpage and send it directly to me, and then I'll turn it over and we will put it on the list. I'm not excluding anything. I'm not adding to what you say. We're just going to put it on the list. It's all raw data for you to consider, or for future meetings to consider and then work out and see what categories all of these fall under. What we're looking for are keywords that denote a trend in the city that will lead us into the directions that we want to go. So I'm going to turn it over to you now. I'm going to ask you to start this process. We will be monitoring it throughout the day and for the next week as we look for you, for your responses of things that you think of. We want you to take an active part of this and be part of this process. It will not happen quickly. When we do have the final list of ideas that were put out, we will put those in a format that can be easily categorized, and then we will put that out on the webpage so that you can read those and you can keep up with the efforts as we go along. If you want to become more actively involved in this, next, contact me and let me know. We're looking for people who see the value of this and see that it's important and want to be part of the decision-making process. So that's what I have for you today, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Remember, together we can do anything.